The hidden psychological reason you underestimate yourself. There's a strange kind of person who exists in almost every group of people you will ever meet. They are talented. They are capable. Sometimes they are the most skilled person in the entire room. And yet, if you ask them how good they actually are, they will shrink. They will deflect. They will tell you they got lucky, that anyone could have done what they did, that they still have so much to learn before they deserve any credit at all. Meanwhile, somewhere else in that same room there is another person, far less skilled, far less experienced, and they are completely convinced they are exceptional. Something is deeply wrong with this picture. The people who are actually good at things doubt themselves the most, and the people who are not very good at things are often the most confident of all. Today we are going to open up this paradox and look inside it, because hidden underneath it is one of the most quietly damaging psychological patterns a person can carry. It is the reason you have probably underestimated yourself more times than you can count. And by the end of this video, you will never be able to look at your own self-doubt the same way again. Going further, the more competent a person becomes, the more aware they become of everything they still do not know. Expertise does not simply add knowledge. It also reveals the size of the territory that remains unexplored. So the expert, standing at the edge of a vast and complicated field, feels smaller the more they learn, not bigger. Meanwhile, the beginner stands at the entrance of that same field. They can only see the first few steps. From where they stand, the path looks short and simple. So they conclude, quite naturally, that they have already mastered it. This creates a bizarre and unfair outcome. The people most qualified to judge their own ability often judge it too harshly, and the people least qualified to judge their own ability often judge it far too generously. If you have ever finished a piece of work you were proud of, only to feel a wave of doubt right before showing it to someone else, this is not a personal flaw. It is not evidence that you are secretly untalented. It is something else entirely. It is a signature of a mind that has actually developed real skill. So why does this happen? Why would becoming better at something make you feel worse about yourself? The answer lives in how the brain builds a model of competence. When you first begin learning something, whether it is public speaking, painting, coding, or parenting, your brain has almost no reference points. It cannot yet see the difference between an average attempt and an excellent one, because it has never been exposed to enough examples to build that comparison. Everything new looks impressive simply because you have nothing to compare it to. But as you grow more skilled, something changes. You begin to notice details you were once blind to. A musician who has practiced for 10 years can hear tiny imperfections in their own playing that a beginner would never catch. A writer who has read thousands of books can spot the weak sentence in their own paragraph instantly. Their standards have grown alongside their ability, and often their standards grow even faster than their ability does. This creates a widening gap. The skill goes up, but the internal standard for what counts as good goes up even higher and even faster. The distance between where you are and where you believe you should be does not shrink as you improve. It often grows, and that growing gap is what you experience quietly as self-doubt. Researchers David Dunning and Justin Kruger found the mirror image of this in their well-known study. People with limited ability in a given area often lack the very skill needed to recognize their own limitations. A certain baseline of competence is required just to judge competence accurately in the first place. The truly skilled have crossed that threshold, and crossing it is exactly what allows them to see their own gaps so clearly. The beginner cannot see the gap. The expert cannot stop seeing it, so the pattern is not random, it is structural, and it leads to a strange conclusion, one worth sitting with for a moment. Self-doubt is not the opposite of competence. It is often one of competence's side effects. Let me give you a picture of this drawn from the life of one of the most celebrated writers of the 20th century. John Steinbeck, the author behind some of the most enduring works of American literature, kept private journals while writing what would become one of his most acclaimed novels. In those journals he confided that he doubted whether he had the ability to finish the book at all. He worried that his words were flat, that his talent had been exaggerated by others, and that he was somehow fooling everyone around him into believing he was a real writer. This was not a young, inexperienced man. This was an author already respected in literary circles, in the middle of producing what would become a defining work of his career. And still, in private, he considered himself close to a fraud. This was not confined to writing. Even Albert Einstein, in the later years of his life, reportedly told a friend that he felt like something of an involuntary swindler, uneasy with how much acclaim had been placed on his work. One of the most significant scientific minds in modern history, privately unconvinced that he deserved the praise the world kept giving him. A writer at the height of his craft, a scientist who reshaped how we understand the universe. Two completely different fields, two completely different centuries, and the exact same quiet feeling underneath. That is the pattern worth noticing. This is not a writer's problem or a scientist's problem. It is a competence problem, and it shows up wherever real skill grows. This feeling has a name in modern psychology. It is called imposter phenomenon, first described by psychologists Pauline Clance and Suzanne Imes in the late 1970s, after they observed this exact pattern in a group of highly accomplished women who could not internally accept their own success, despite clear external evidence of it. We have established that the gap between skill and standard explains the feeling, but there is a deeper turn hiding underneath that, and it is this. Most people assume confidence is the reward you get once you become competent. Awareness comes first. Confidence, if it comes at all, only comes later, and it comes on its own separate timeline. Think about what actually happens the moment you get better at something. Your awareness of the field expands instantly. Your confidence does not. Confidence is slow. It depends on repeated proof, on time, on enough evidence accumulating that your nervous system finally believes it. Awareness needs no such proof. It arrives the second you see something you could not see before, so there is always a lag, a window in which you know more but do not yet feel more sure. Most people live inside that lag for years without ever naming it. They mistake the lag itself for a personal defect, when it is really just timing. There is a related idea from the psychologist Leon Festinger, known as social comparison theory. Festinger observed that people judge their own worth largely by comparing themselves to those slightly ahead of them rather than those behind. A skilled person, naturally studies the work of masters in their field, so their comparison point quietly shifts upward to the best examples they have ever encountered. Against that backdrop, of course, they feel smaller, not because they have less, because their measuring stick got longer. This is the hidden mechanism. You are not underestimating yourself because you lack proof of your own ability. You are underestimating yourself because awareness always outruns confidence, and you have been reading that gap as a verdict when it is really just a delay. So what do you actually do with this? How does understanding this change anything in your day-to-day life? First, separate the feeling of doubt from the measurement of your ability. The feeling of not being good enough is not reliable data. It is simply a signal that your standards have grown. Instead of asking, "Am I good enough?" a more useful question is, "Have I actually grown compared to where I started?" That comparison against your past self rather than against an imagined ideal tends to be far more accurate and far kinder. Second, keep a private record of concrete evidence. Not vague feelings, but specific things. Projects completed. Problems solved. Moments where someone depended on your judgment and you delivered. The mind that doubts itself is persuasive, but it is not always accurate, and written evidence is one of the few things that can quietly outvote an anxious inner voice. Third, recognize confidence in others for what it actually is. When you meet someone who seems entirely sure of themselves, remember that unshakable confidence is often a sign of a smaller field of vision, not a larger one. This does not mean confident people are always wrong. It simply means confidence and competence are not the same currency, and you should not trade one for the other when judging your own worth. Fourth, understand that doubt, in the right dose, is actually functional. It keeps skilled people checking their work, refining their craft, and staying humble enough to keep learning. The goal is not to eliminate this feeling completely. The goal is to stop mistaking it for the truth about your ability and start treating it as simply the shadow that growth casts behind it. Here is the thought I want to leave you with. The feeling of not being enough is not proof that you have failed to grow. In most cases, it is proof of the opposite. It is the exact sensation that appears when a person has climbed high enough to finally see how tall the mountain really is. The people who never feel this way are usually not standing at the summit. They are standing at the base, unable yet to see past the first ridge, mistaking it for the whole climb. So the next time you find yourself minimizing what you have accomplished, telling yourself it was nothing special, that anyone could have done it, pause for a moment and consider a different interpretation. That discomfort is not a verdict on your worth. It is a receipt, proof that you have moved forward far enough to see a horizon you could not see before. You were never as small as you felt. You were simply standing somewhere new, looking out at a view that only becomes visible once you have already grown enough to reach it. If this reframed something for you, stay a while longer in the vortex of meaning. There is more to uncover here, one idea at a time,